Hi everyone, and welcome to Exploring the Build. If you just found this place, then welcome. And if you're returning, I'm glad to have you back. I'm Alex, and this is my channel where we theorycraft and explore different character builds for Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Today we are continuing the Gloomhaven series of character builds, where we're trying to take the character classes from Gloomhaven and recreate them in Dungeons & Dragons. This is our first spoiler class today, as we are starting into the locked character classes from Gloomhaven. We're going to be making the Angry Face class in Gloomhaven, and if you don't want anything spoiled about the character class, whether you either were going to play Gloomhaven eventually, or you are playing it and you haven't unlocked the class yet, then feel free to watch the video at a later time. I won't take any offense. If you're okay with spoilers, or you already know what the character class is, or are just kind of interested in wanting to see what this character build is going to do, then feel free to come along as we explore the build. I'll pause for a moment now, but then this is the final warning for anyone who doesn't want spoilers. Okay, let's get started. Today, we are looking at making the Angry Face, aka the Doomstalker. Overall, the Doomstalker is a ranged, single-target damage dealer. They do have access to some summons or trap-laying actions, but their main gimmick is the ability to mark an enemy with their Doom actions. Each Doom provides a different unique bonus, plus the Doomstalker has various abilities to improve either their Dooms or their attacks against doomed enemies. Looking at what we need to recreate the Doomstalker in D&D, we're going to want to get a lot of single-target range damage, summons as well as some traps, and of course our Doom abilities. Before we start the build, let's look at their flavor text. The Orchid Doomstalker. Though most orchids live a life of meditation, there is a sect who believe that enlightenment should be achieved through hard work and not getting lost in thought for years on end. Because of its beliefs, this sect fled Orchid Society across the Misty Sea to build farms and raise livestock in the wilds around Gloomhaven. The wilds are still dangerous, however, and the Orchid class of Doomstalkers is tasked with keeping these modest settlements safe. The calm mind of the Orchid makes the Doomstalker an excellent bow hunter. He never misses a shot. Starting at character creation, with our lineage, we are going to choose Custom Lineage. The Doomstalker is another Orchid, just like our Spellweaver from back in the starting 6 classes. So with Custom Lineage, as usual, we're going to get either a skill or Dark Vision. Since it doesn't really matter what we pick, we're going to go with Dark Vision, because we don't really need the extra skill, though you could take it if you want it. We're also going to gain a free feat, and +2 to an ability score of our choice. For our free feat, we're going to take Piercer. Piercer gives us a +1 to either our strength or dexterity, plus once per turn when we deal piercing damage, we get to reroll the damage. Has to be with an attack, but that's fine. Plus, when we crit, we deal an extra die of damage with our weapon. This is a great feat right off the bat, since it both improves an ability score, plus it increases our damage, plus it actually acts a bit like Gloomhaven's Strength or Pierce. The Strengthened condition in Gloomhaven gives advantage on attacks, which really acts like re-rolling damage more than re-rolling an attack, and Piercer is all about shredding through enemy armor, which re-rolling damage kind of feels like sometimes. We take this feat for all of these benefits, plus its critical effect bonus. For our stats, we're just going to plug everything into Dexterity, both the +2 from Custom Lineage and the +1 from Piercer. We're going to want to drastically boost our starting Dex score, but we're actually not going to want to make it as good as possible, and there's reasons that I'll get into later. So following point by as usual, we're going to want to end up with 8 Strength, only 17 Dexterity, 8 Intelligence, 14 Wisdom, and 13 Charisma. For our background, everything works fine as usual, and given that the Doomstalker is thematically tied to nature, I think something like Outlander would work best. Feel free to go with any other background that you feel is more appropriate, though, again, it doesn't really matter too much. Time to start the actual level breakdown of the build. At level 1, we're going to start off as Ranger. Ranger gives us favored enemy and favored terrain, though with the optional rules from Tasha's, we can change those out for some other abilities. Favored enemy we can trade for favored foe, and favored terrain we can trade for Deft Explorer. Favored Foe is a mini Hunter's Mark ability, and while it isn't as powerful as Hunter's Mark the spell, it's going to act as our first Doom, so we're actually going to want to take that. Favored Terrain we can actually keep instead of taking Deft Explorer, Though I won't blame you if you do take Deft Explorer, as it's a little bit more general instead of making us specific at exploring specific points of terrain. Rather, Deft Explorer just gives us a couple of good skill increases, some languages, and a few other benefits. For this build, I'm going to say that we have favored terrain, but you take whichever one you want. At level 2, we're going to go to Ranger 2, and Ranger 2 gives us spellcasting and a fighting style. For the fighting style, we're going to just go with archery right away. The Doomstalker is an archer, and in fact, they are the archer. Archery is going to help us reach that exact pinnacle. We're going to have a +2 to all of our attacks that we make while using a ranged weapon. Really good to have. For spellcasting, we're going to pick up Hunter's Mark for sure, as this gives us a second Doom option. The actual extra effect we're going to actually want to think about, because that means that we can track an enemy easier now with Hunter's Markup. Plus, since we took favored terrain, if we're in our favored terrain, we can really track enemies. The damage is also really good to have as well. As far as our other spells go, we're going to want to pick Snare, as this gives us a trap. It isn't the best spell, but we aren't taking it to be the best. We're taking it because the Doomstalker is capable of making traps, and we want to try to emulate that. We can make traps outside of spells as well, but for the sake of just having a easy access to an on-demand trap that requires no materials, we take Snare. At level 3, we're going to gain a few features. We gain Primeval Awareness, or Primal Awareness, depending on if you're using Tasha's or not. And really, depending on what we want, we can take either of these. There's nothing spectacular, and there's no game-breaking abilities that either of these are going to give us. We also gain our subclass. And for our subclass, we're just going to take Hunter. We could take Beastmaster theoretically, though I want to kind of try and save that for other character builds. However, the Doomstalker is capable of having a lot of summons. Beastmaster would make us act like we have a few more summons. We're just going to go with Hunter to up our actual range damage, and we'll worry about getting summons through a different method later on. Hunter Ranger gives us another choice of ability, and we're going to take Colossus Slayer. Colossus Slayer gives us an extra 1d8 damage against an enemy that isn't at full health. It's kind of the opposite of some cards that we have, but it's extra damage, so we're going to take it. At level 4, we're going to go to Ranger 4 and get an ASI/feat. Here, we're going to take Sharpshooter. Sharpshooter gives us a great boost to our ranged attacks, and we can fire further and ignore cover. Plus, we can forgo some of our attack bonus to deal a lot of extra damage. We're really upping the damage first before we worry about rounding out the ability score, but Sharpshooter is still very nice for us to have, especially to increase our range by a whole lot. At level 5, we're going to switch over to Rogue. At Rogue 1, we gain Thieves' Cant, which is a rogue unique language. We also gain Expertise and Sneak Attack. Expertise will double our proficiency in 2 skills of our choice, and these can be whichever ones we want, as long as they're not nature or survival, because we're actually going to pick those up later. For this build, I'm going to choose Stealth and Thieves tools for our expertise, so we can just be really good at roguish-like activities. Our Sneak Attack is 1d6 for now, but will hopefully increase as we level up, and even though it only triggers once per turn, that won't be too bad, since we're probably not going to be making more than 1 attack per turn anyways. At level 6, we are Rogue 2, and we're going to gain Cunning Action. Cunning Action gives us the ability to dash, disengage, or hide as a bonus action. However, with Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, we can also use it to aim. Aim is a powerful benefit that grants us on-demand advantage for our next attack at the cost of our movement. We can't move after we aim, and we can't aim after we've already moved. Lucky for us, our range is so high thanks to Sharpshooter that our movement shouldn't matter too much. Now that we have both on-demand advantage and can reroll our piercing damage, this means we effectively have the Doomstalker's Exposed card. We are the Doomstalker and we do not miss. We're only making 1 attack per turn, so we want to dedicate as many resources as possible to make sure that that 1 attack hits our enemies. At level 7, we're going to go up to Rogue 3. Rogue 3 gives us another subclass, and for that we're going to choose Scout. Scout is going to give us Skirmisher and Survivalist for our actual features. Survivalist gives us expertise in nature and survival if we don't already have them, which we purposely avoided taking them because we were going to get them here, so that's why we didn't take them earlier. And Skirmisher allows us to use our reaction to move half our speed after an enemy ends their turn next to us. Neither of these abilities are super Doomstalker-esque in terms of Gloomhaven, but they do make us feel like more of an explorer and gives us some extra mobility that can help in a pinch. Notably, if we do have to use Skirmisher from time to time, we can move and that movement won't impact our ability to aim later on, which is actually really great. At level 8, we gain another ASI/feat from Rogue 4, and here we're going to actually buff our Dex by 1 and our Charisma by 1. This will round off both of these scores to be nice and even and gives us a strong boost to both our attacks and damage. At level 9, we're going to quickly dip into Warlock 1. This is the reason why we were keeping our Charisma at 13 and then improved it to 14. We're going to gain Pact Magic, which gives us 1 first level spell slot that recovers on a short rest, and we also gain 2 spells, 2 cantrips, and a patron. For our cantrips, take any 2 that you want that aren't important. We're not going to use them as much. They'd probably be better outside of combat than in combat. For spells, we're going to take Hex and any other 1 spell. Hex is our next Doom action that acts exactly like Hunter's Mark, but instead of allowing us to track an enemy better, this provides a debuff. Finally, for our patron, we are going to pick Hexblade. Hexblade gives us Hexblade's Curse and Hex Warrior. Hex Warrior isn't too important as we didn't build for it, and Hexblade's Curse, however, is also going to act as a Doom for us, which is really nice. The Hexblade's Curse makes it easier for us to crit an enemy, deals extra damage whenever we deal damage to that enemy, and it gives us some extra healing when that enemy dies. Thematically, Warlock is a weird choice, but because of the 2 options of Hex and the Curse that we get from Hexblade, I couldn't really pass them up as they're really good mimics for our Doom actions. At level 10, we're going to see where we want to go with the build. If we continue up Ranger, we'll get a second attack plus second level spells, meaning we can grab Summon Beast, which is our first summon. We could then continue with Ranger and eventually pick up Conjure Animals for a better summon spell, along with all the other Ranger abilities that we get along the way. On the other hand, we could continue down Rogue to make ourselves better outside of combat, plus we can rack up a lot of sneak attack. The downside is that 1 attack per turn, even with a reliable source of advantage, technically just isn't as good as 2 attacks. Finally, we could also continue down Warlock. The spells won't be too powerful though, since our Charisma isn't great, and I don't plan on increasing it any further. But we would get Invocations, which could be something like Eldritch Smite, which would add a lot of more damage to our attacks. So which do we pick? Well, it's pretty much up to you and your own personal preference. We're already a bit of an absurd character, so any of these paths are going to be fine, and none of them are going to give us any more Doomstalker things than what we already have. We have a trap, we have dooms, and we have a lot of range damage. That actually does mean that we're missing pretty much 1 thing, so I'm going to go back to 5th level Ranger. It's going to give us an extra attack as well as our summons. Realistically though, we're never going to use our Summon Beast since it's concentration and we'd rather use our dooms, but that's kind of similar to the Gloomhaven class anyways. Why use your summons as a card permanently out there when they could die, whereas our dooms we can use to mark an enemy and eventually get them back to use again later on. Maybe there is some niche scenario where we actually want an extra ally in combat instead of us just dealing extra damage, but either way, we do want the summon because the Doomstalker has summons. At level 11, we're actually going to go back to Rogue, and we're going to stick with Rogue for the rest of the build. I really only did the 1 extra dip back into Ranger for the summon to actually make up for that element of the build. Warlock could mechanically be powerful with Eldritch Smite as well as more spell slots, especially higher level spell slots, but like I said, it doesn't fit the Doomstalker thematically. Rogue is the best of both worlds, not in terms of theme, but in terms of what we actually want to do for our single target damage and other good abilities. Rogue 5 is going to give us Uncanny Dodge. Uncanny Dodge uses our reaction, so we'll have to choose between it or Skirmisher, depending on the situation we're in. But it also allows us to have the damage from an attack that hits us. So if there's a big attack, probably use Uncanny Dodge. If the enemy just gets to us and doesn't actually get to attack or hits us for a little bit of damage, probably Skirmisher to run away. On level 12, we are a Rogue 6. Rogue 6 gives us our next round of expertise. We already have expertise in Stealth, Thieves' Tools, Nature, and Survival, so we can pick any 2 skills that we really want. We already have pretty much everything that we could want as the Doomstalker. Personally, I'm going to go with Perception and Investigation, so that way we can spot enemies and traps much more effectively. At level 13, we gain Evasion from being a 7th level Rogue. Evasion lets us take half damage if we fail a dex save and none if we succeed. This is a big boost to our survivability, and while it isn't really a part of Gloomhaven, we're going to take it anyway. We also now have 4d6 for our sneak attack, which is starting to get very powerful. At level 14, we are a rogue 8, and we gain another ASI/feat. Here we're going to boost our dex by 2 in order to finally cap it at 20. We could probably grab a couple of other good feats, but capping our dex now allows us to pick those feats up later without actually having to worry about scaling or really making it a hard choice. At level 15, we are rogue 9, and we're going to gain our next scout feature. This is superior mobility. Superior mobility increases all of our speeds by a flat 10, including climbing and swimming speeds. We don't actually have those, but if we took Deft Explorer from our early levels in Ranger, then we actually could go up to Ranger 6 in order to pick those speeds up, and now gain a bonus to them. Since we stick with favorite terrain though, it's not a big deal. At level 16, Rogue 10 gives us another ASI/feat, which is actually pretty nice. We don't need to boost our stats anymore, like I said when we capped our dex at 20, so instead we're going to stick with picking up a powerful new ability, such as Alert. Alert says we cannot be surprised. We gain a +5 bonus to our initiative, and other creatures don't gain advantage against us if we can't see them. As the Doomstalker, we like to go fast, and we actually tend to be able to counter invisibility pretty reliably. See the Exposed card for more details. At level 17, we're going to go up to Rogue 11, and here we gain Reliable Talent. Reliable Talent is pretty much the feature that people say makes rogues so good. It's mainly used out of combat because it says that whenever we make a skill check that we are proficient in, we get to count any roll of 9 or lower as a 10. We're an expert at what we do, and in this case, what we do is generally concerned with tracking and wilderness exploration, so we'll definitely take it. We are certainly the Doomstalker who is meant to stalk enemies to their doom. Level 18, we are a Rogue 12, and we are back to gain yet another ASI/feat. Here I'm going to take Mobile. Mobile offers us a 10-foot move speed increase, and we also can ignore difficult terrain when taking the dash action, and we can ignore opportunity attacks if we make a melee attack against an enemy. That last part, we're pretty much just going to ignore. But the move speed and the dash part are actually pretty great. The dash we can count as a pseudo jump, and it helps us get over any legitimate difficult terrain, assuming we actually want to dash instead of just shooting and firing from afar. The move speed is also nice because even though we don't use it often because of our aim ability, we want to make each move count. So more move speed equals better movement, and that's a win-win in the Doomstalker's book. It should be noted that as a move speed of 50 feet from our Scout subclass and the Mobile feat, this means that Skirmisher now allows us to move 25 feet when an enemy ends their turn next to us instead of just 15 as per usual, or at least when we started with it. That's really good given that we want to have as much movement as possible in any situation that we come across. At level 19, we are a Rogue 13, and here we pick up the last of our Scout abilities. It's not going to be the capstone, this is just as far as we're getting to go into Scout. We're going to get Ambush Master. Ambush Master says that we now have advantage on initiative rolls, which is great since we already actually have a +10 to initiative. So now advantage +10 means we're probably going first. Also, the first creature that we hit during our first turn in combat is going to get marked, where all of our allies have advantage against that enemy until the start of our second turn. This is just another Doom-like effect, but it's awesome because it's passive and doesn't cost any resources. It's only on the first turn, but it's still nice to have, and we're just happy that we got it even after waiting such a long time. Finally, at level 20, we're going to end the build with Rogue 14. Here we get Blind Sense, which allows us to see invisible or hidden creatures within 10 feet of us. This finally finishes off our Expose card. The Expose card admittedly is only one way to build the Doomstalker in Gloomhaven. However, I really wanted to finish it because it's a very unique playstyle that the Doomstalker has. Blind Sense is very limited for us since it's only 10 feet away, but combine this with Alert, that means that enemies that are going to target us with attacks aren't going to gain advantage. We can also see them, and presumably when we mark them with something like Hunter's Mark, that'll make it really easy to find them when they do move outside our 10-foot range. If they are in 10 feet, the Blind Sense kind of overrules the Alert bonus, but that's perfectly fine. And plus, 10 feet, even though it's very, very close to the enemy, still has a bit of space in between it where we can still use our ranged attacks, which is also exactly what we want to have. Alright, time to summarize the build. We are the Doomstalker and we do not miss. We can have an extremely reliable source of advantage for our attacks with the aim ability from Rogue. And with 2 attacks per turn, plus we can reroll our weapon damage, we're definitely going to hopefully not just hit, but deal a reasonable amount of damage when we do attack enemies. We also have Blind Sense and Alert, which when combined with our on-demand advantage gives us our Expose card perfectly. And then will really make us a threat against enemies that would otherwise think that they can get the upper hand against us. We have to be pretty close to them if we want to use Blind Sense, but we'll worry about that when the time comes. As for our core mechanics, we also have plenty of Doom-like effects. We have Favored Foe, Hunter's Mark, Hex, Hexblade's Curse, and Ambush Master. Most of these effects just add damage, but some will provide a nice little bonus as well. And they aren't as many different mark abilities, or at least a variety of mark effects really, that the actual Doom cards in the Doomstalker's kit have, but they're enough of a variety and they do different things that we'll still take them, and hopefully we can feel like we're actually doing different things. Especially since we can switch between them if we want to, or just pick one and use it over and over and over again each combat. That choice is totally up to you, and I would let you decide what you want to do, if you want to just go for mechanical damage boosting, or if you want to feel like you're actually being a Doomstalker and providing different effects at different times by switching between each of these mark abilities. Finally, we also have some access to both a summon and traps. In all honesty, I doubt we'll ever actually use these. It's still nice to have them for our theme. Plus, if we did want to use them, there might be some opportunities where they'll actually really come in handy. In D&D terms, we're a very powerful single target damage dealer. We have 7d6 from sneak attack that will add on to one of our attacks each turn, which with a longbow, I'll assume we'll use a longbow. We don't need to go into like crossbow expert or anything like that. We're not min-maxing that hard. We'll also be dealing a d8 regularly for the weapon, which then gets an extra d8 once per turn, assuming the target has already lost some hit points, and that's from Colossus Slayer. And then we also add our damage from our Doom effects, which can be either a d6 from Hex or Hunter's Mark, a d4 from Favored Foe, or even just raw numbers from Hexblade's Curse. That is proficiency bonus, pretty much. And then on top of all of that, we can also add in sharpshooter damage. Assuming we feel confident in being able to land a sharpshooter hit, that adds a flat +10, which is really where the big boost to our damage is going to come from. Admittedly, the one drawback here is that all our Doom effects are better if we just attacked more often. 2 attacks is still fine, but mechanically speaking, these would get better with even more attacks, such as if we went Fighter. This is more of a D&D issue rather than an issue with our build, though. We just aren't playing mechanically optimal for this build, but rather using it as more theme than anything else. Let me know what you thought about our character build today, or what you would change to get closer to the actual theme of the Gloomhaven character class. Thank you for coming along on this journey with me, and I hope to see you in the next one.